Well, it's a real honor and privilege to be speaking with so many entrepreneurs from around the world. Startup Brian has been doing some great work. I just found out you guys have actually 600 chapters around the world. That's amazing. And hopefully, I'm going to give you some information that's helpful for you guys to prepare what you want to be doing for the next, 5 or 10 years as the world changes. Having been an entrepreneur and also an investor, I'm also heading the investment arm for HTC, as well as the president of the Virtual Reality Venture Capital Alliance, which has about 50 VCs in it. So I see and talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, and we've invested in over 100 AR and VR related companies in the last 4 years as part of the VIDEX program at HTC. So, I definitely look forward to hearing some questions from you guys afterwards in terms of anything that you might have interest in there. So today I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about kind of where things are going with XR. So XR is essentially the combination of VR, AR, and MR. It's kind of a term that is becoming increasingly popular. But as right now, we're essentially in a video first world, right? What we're doing right now as our meeting is a video conference. Most of our daily meetings with our staff, with our teammates, with our customers are all also using video. This is something that is actually relatively new, but it is not necessarily the most efficient way for us as professionals to communicate with each other, and also for us to build the deep relationships that are needed to be functional and productive, both in the professional world and the personal world. So, so the picture earlier was really about a person going into a new world and exploring it. I think we're in a way in a very special time because we're stepping into a new world. Over the last year, the world has been changing around us, and we're having an option of using video as a way to connect to the world. So just last week, the biggest news that came out was the Perseverance rover landing, and this is how most people saw it, right? Most people saw that experience by watching something on TV, watching the news. But a group of VR enthusiasts, what they did was actually they found a virtual reality model of the surface of Mars, and then they brought in virtual 3D models of the rover and the lander, and they simulated the entire landing while watching and streaming the video of what was going on. So, why just watch what's happening around the world and watch history being made when you can actually participate and actually live the history, right? So this is what's possible today with the technology that's already available to us. So we're really, I think, fortunate as both individuals and as well as entrepreneurs that there are so many technologies right now that are all starting to mature around the same time. And all of these technologies are going to dramatically disrupt and change the way that we live and create brand new opportunities for startups and for investors to really impact the world. So this is, I think, kind of the best time to be alive ever on this world. So I'm really glad I'm able to be here at this time and able to have an impact in at least one segment of the technologies out there. But there are so many things that are now happening. I won't spend time to go through all of these, but I just wanted to really stress to everybody that I think we need to appreciate how fortunate we are that we're able to see all of this thing, all of the future coming together at the same time. I think when one of these type of technologies happens in our lifetime, that's already amazing. But when all of these things are happening simultaneously, This is creating a giant technology tidal wave that is going to be disrupting all parts of our personal life, our professional life, and really the environment that we live in. And I think it's going to also open up our minds and our new opportunities for creating companies that had been unimaginable before. So I wanted to share with you some ideas and some things that are happening in XR. As an entrepreneur, it's really important for you to be able to see far ahead and see beyond all the dreariness that's around us today. Right now, I spent the last 3 weeks in the room, locked in quarantine because I'm doing international travel, and it's very easy to be depressed or stressed by the lack of activity and lack of personal connection. But I have to say that it actually went by a lot faster than I had expected because of technology, because of all the ways that we can use to interact with the rest of the world, even when we can't physically be together. And I think that connection and the ways that we connect will get even um, more full and more impactful going forward. So there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and I think we're getting close to it. So one of the technologies I think that relates to XR, which a lot of people are talking about, is 5G. And 5G is essentially the next generation mobile network, and it's got 10 to 100 times the bandwidth and 10 times faster connectivity in terms of latency, reduced latency, and 10 to 100 times more devices that can connect on it. So that will actually help enable a way for us to have these devices be processed on a cloud-based system versus all on board on the devices, which will in turn make these devices thinner and lighter and hopefully cheaper. Another thing I think that's happening that will impact our lives is AI, and AI, I think, is going to impact us, from a VR perspective, XR perspective, in essentially all of the computer vision that's happening, all of the tracking that's happening, hand tracking, voice tracking, facial tracking, all of that is really going to be enabled because of what's developed recently with all the advancing in AI. But I think one of the things that's actually quite exciting going forward is new language models. GPT-3 is something that just came out earlier last year. And it's got 100 billion parameters that you can go in and essentially can mimic a realistic communication with a device that feels very natural and create storytelling and create NPCs that are just so much more realistic than ever possibly before. I mean, people are using it to write poems and write articles, write stories. The ultimate goal of where AI is going is AGI, artificial general intelligence. I think we're still some ways away from that, but when that does happen, and it will happen, I think a lot of people are afraid of it really creating and maybe becoming the overlord for human society. I actually am more optimistic. I think what it will do is it will probably free us up to spend our time and our energy doing things that we really enjoy instead of the monotonous things that we have to do most days. A lot of our daily lives are doing repetitive work and non-value generating work. So hopefully the AGIs out there will then allow us to have 2-hour days or maybe 5-hour weeks so that we can spend the rest of our time being more creative and doing the things that are really exciting. So this takes us to the XR concept, right? XR essentially is a technology that will replace all of your senses with something artificial, whether sight, sound, smell, touch, even motion can be replaced with the device, allowing you to simulate any environment you want and doing any activity you want in a hyper realistic way. It's not a new technology. It's been around for 50, 60 years, but it has made huge improvements over the last 5 to 10 years, and particularly the last, I think, 3 or 4 years in terms of where it's going. I've been very fortunate over the last, 40, 50 years that I've seen multiple generations of technologies happening, from the PCs in the 80s to the web in the 90s to mobile taking over. And I've done startups in all of these areas. And then in 2015, I joined HTC to really help bring this VR XR revolution to the rest of the world. And I think in every one of these generations, they're looking like around a 10-year type cycles. But what we're going to find, I think, with XR is that XR is going to be a much longer cycle, because it's going to take much longer for that technology to mature to where you get to the indistinguishable reality between the real and the virtual world. So we've been we've been essentially trained over the last wait a second. Okay. We've been trained over the last 30, 40 years to use two interfaces, keyboard, mouse, and touchscreen. And I think those have been very efficient and very helpful for us, but it is definitely not the most natural way for us to interact. What XR was going to do is to allow us to bring fully natural interfaces, whether you're talking about hand tracking or eye tracking or haptics or full body tracking, and even brainwave interfaces, to allow you to interact with these virtual environments. So what it takes you to is essentially the holodeck concept. In the 70s, when Star Trek came out, everybody wanted to have a holodeck in their home. With XR today, we actually can have that happen. We can actually have an environment where you put on a headset and you're essentially in any environment you want. The concept of a holodeck actually isn't new. There's these cave systems that's been used by engineering companies, people making planes and cars and spending millions of dollars on these systems. But now what's happening is that that's becoming much more accessible and affordable than ever before, and it's being used in things like film production. The Mandalorian and pretty much John Wick, Star Wars, Lion King, they're all being made in these virtual sets that essentially allow the complete filming, if not live in this environment, to be captured and then post-produced in a virtual environment. So that's where the world is going. And I wanted to share with you a little video that just came out last week.
I could be one of many.
主人公にだってなれる
Je pourrais être architecte.
Ou guide.
Quizá un artista.
You create the narrative.
I am metahuman.
Okay, so the reason I brought that video to share with you guys is that video is actually a rigged avatar that can be rendered in real time using a normal PC. And all you need is a camera or a face tracking, body tracking system to be able to tie anybody to any of these characters. And these characters, as you can see, are ultra realistic, and they have different levels of realism depending on what device you're running on. So in the near future, a lot of celebrities that are going to be out there will not be real people. It will be these virtual humans or virtual avatars of some form, backed by some other character. So very soon, when this level of realism can be a part of the virtual worlds that we're in, it is going to change the way we perceive our interactions with computers. the devices also, I think, will be getting smaller and lighter and more fashionable. This is a concept photo or picture from about, I think, 4 years ago from Givenchy about where future VR XR devices are going to go. These are devices that are either already available in the market or coming to the market, and they look pretty close to what these conceptual, fashion products are going to be, or were thought to be, right? So I think we're really moving fast forward into the future. We're really all living in the future, in fact. And I think anybody who's here probably is a fan of The Matrix, and I love that movie when it came out in the 90s, and I think it's one of the reasons why I really enjoyed and got into the VR space. In 1991, as I actually introduced to VR and studied it in college. And I think we all dreamed about being able to live in that virtual world of hyper realism. And I think it is coming, but it is going to take a little bit longer than a lot of people expect. In fact, I'm sure you guys have probably heard about the Neuralink. It's a BCI, brain computer interface company being done by Elon Musk. And they're essentially creating little chips that they can embed into your skull. It's a little bit probably extreme for most people, but that technology is kind of the first generation of what this ultimately will become. It'll probably take 10 or more years for that technology to become something that everybody could potentially use, and it hopefully will become a lot less invasive than it is today. But the future that has been talked about in movies and in novels are now really already here. It's just not evenly distributed, as William Gibson says. So I made this picture diagram about 3 years ago, and I think we're pretty much still right on track to make this happen. Just over 100 years ago, we actually had 0 screens in our lives, and over the last 100 years, we've been adding more and more screens. And if you take just the left side of this picture, you would think, oh, in another 10 or 20 years, we'll have another 20 or 30 screens in our lives. The reality is that we're going to go backwards. We're going to go all the way back to 0 screens in our life, and probably in the next 20 to 30 years, where we start having embedded devices to do all of the display technology that we need. But in the meantime, all of the current screens that we have in our life will be replaced by the XR devices that are going to come out. And over time, we're going to have less and less screens and more mobility and higher levels of realism. So in 1997, this video came out because I feel like video seems like it just, video-based communication seems like something that just came overnight, right? But I want to show you this video.
Your computer's ringing.
It's my video phone.
Video phone?
With Intel video phone technology, talking face-to-face on your PC is easy.
Hi, Bob. Lisa, my brother Jim. Jim, my date, Lisa.
Hi.
Hi.
Oops. Jim.
So, I was actually at Intel at the time when this happened, and I remember how excited people were about the future of video-based communication. But it's essentially taken over 20 years for that to suddenly take off, right? Because the environment's changing. And in the same way, this overnight success, I think, will be the same type of a trend for XR. And the success is pushed because of what's happening in the world, and the impetus of the COVID and the social distancing is creating a need for us to have a more effective way to communicate.
Hey, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can everybody hear me? Are we waiting on anyone? Can everyone see my screen? Oh,
so
there we go.
This new
Welcome to my
normal
kitchen.
is what we're used to right now, but it's definitely not
oh, sorry,
optimal.
I think you're muted.
Right. I mean, what we usually see instead of a nice, bright picture of everybody is usually people who turn on the screens or bad colors, and what we as humans are used to is working in a spatial 3D space. and communicating in a 3D space. So I think this is where the world will be going, because after a year or two or three, we're going to find out that, you know what, we need something better. And the efficiency benefits of working and communicating in a 3D space will become more and more apparent. So these are actual pictures of meetings that I have with my staff on a weekly basis, where we're, communicating and having our meetings in a 3D space, whether or not the teams are in the same office. In China, most of our teams are actually back in the office, but between offices, having to use video communication or audio communication is very inefficient. So we actually put everybody into the same 3D space, so that it creates that sense of community that we can't have otherwise. And of course, doing major events, we've done a number of major events last year to be able to bring together thousands of people in a location, so that we can replicate the types of activities that we once had when the physical travel was accessible. So I actually had my team work with a university in Beijing to do a comparison of efficiencies of audio-based, video-based, face-to-face across offices, and spatial communication and face-to-face communication. And what we found was that face-to-face was definitely the best, and audio was the worst in terms of productivity. But what surprised me was spatial collaboration was significantly higher than pretty much anything else out there, and very close to face-to-face. And what was even more interesting was that the level of engagement of people in these activities was even higher in a spatial collaboration environment than in the face-to-face, because of the lack of power structure and the lack of sense of authority. So people are more open to communicate. And I think that's something that if we want all the ideas and creativity of all the teams to come out, that's something that we should all value. Now, as individuals, we're all now spending a lot more time working and living and studying from home. But I think this is actually an opportunity. And with a device in your hand, whether a PC or a phone or a VR device, you can work from anywhere. It's not just working from home, and it actually frees us now to have a different lifestyle. I think actually it creates a new gig economy, 2.0. It's not about having a car and then using that car to be your gig economy, or having a house and using that to share to make money, but really about how do you balance your life? How do you live anywhere you want and still be able to be productive? And I think that's where the world is going. And we are going to have a lot more work-life balance and a lot more work-life satisfaction than we've ever had because of these new tools. And there's a lot of companies now that have pretty much told their staff that they don't have to come into the office anymore. And I think that will become an increasing trend even after the vaccines are distributed. So here's a little video of how we expect people will be working going forward. So with high-end pass-through video VR devices, you can bring in the real world or have a fully virtual world. You can supplement physical activities or products with virtual stuff. And you can also do shared interaction and collaboration in a much more immersive way than was possible in the past. So in the interest of time, I'm going to kind of go a little bit faster. But we did a study to see, when people are working on a sustained basis over a month, which created higher job satisfaction. And what we found was that XR-based communication actually had the highest job satisfaction and a greater sense of belonging than what we do today with audio-based communication or video-based communication. I know a lot of the folks that we work with in our foreign offices, in our Western offices, have not been to the office in over a year. So, they're becoming much more distant with the rest of their team. So by having the ability to get into an XR device, they now, can rekindle a lot of those lost relationships. So in addition to work, I think our study and school life of our children is something that we also need to be very conscious of. I have two college and school age kids, and they're spending a lot of time in front of their computer looking at videos of their teachers and really losing connection with both their teachers and their classmates. What we really want to get to is an environment where rather than watching a video that you lose attention span after probably 10 seconds, is to have a virtual environment where you turn your home into any lab or any location you want to, and be able to do joint communication. So this is actually happening today, where University of Oxford is doing real lectures with model enhanced augmented lectures to be able to take world-class experts to bring information to their students. And what we found was that the concentration level goes up significantly. They're so much less distracted than any even traditional physical classes or online classes. In fact, 6x higher in concentration level, leading to significant higher grades and learning. Even a week later, they remember more and did better in tests than the immediate tests of folks who were doing this in a traditional class.
Virtual world learning platforms that allow
and now there's software that allows you to bring together large amounts of students to simulate that social environment that students need in learning, so that they're not missing the community impact.
We have started to create and support custom online campuses for universities. The University of California, Irvine has had students utilizing Verbella to join lectures, meet with professors during office hours.
So in addition to youth learning, I think something that a lot of people often don't think is really the need to train and retrain adults. I think there was some recent McKinsey and Goldman Sachs study that said there's going to be now 800 million people over the next 10 years that will be dislocated from their jobs because of AI and automation. And they're going to need to be trained to do new things and work in new ways. And there is no better way to train an individual, whether adult or child, than to use XR. XR is really kind of a full brain learning tool. Now, in addition to the more productivity side, there's also the entertainment side. I think you guys probably have heard about all the recent digital concerts happening. We had video-based concerts was kind of the big thing in early 2020 when we first went into lockdown. But over the last year, there's been dozens of major concerts, film festivals, conferences that are happening in XR to allow people to gather and maintain a community that they're lost. Whether the Cannes Film Festival or New York concert or our guidance and conferences, all of this is enabled because of XR technology that's available today. Just imagine what's possible with the technology that will be coming in the next 5 years. In addition, in retail and sales,
the coronavirus outbreak has led to a surge in e-commerce activity. It's also opened the door to a new kind of retail experience, virtual reality shopping. As we'll see in our next story, businesses are starting to see big opportunities in this field. And no one seems more excited about wearing an avatar than their sales staff.
The scenery will look familiar to Tokyo residents. It's the backdrop for a VR shopping event. Like any VR world, the user adopts an avatar to move around.
So in the interest of time, I'll skip that, but you guys can go look for V Market that was happening in VR chat in Japan, or actually VKit. The ability to have your staff, your service staff, people work from home with a VR device to do one-to-one sales to their customers in a virtual world, I think that's going to create a completely different type of working model than has existed in the past. And it enables global workforces that also was not possible. Just a month ago, we worked with Balenciaga to do their fall fashion show in VR, where we preloaded their fashion show content into our VR devices and then shipped them out to hundreds of opinion leaders and press. And they were able to have essentially front row seats at the fashion show, even though they were not able to physically gather together. I think this is going to be a very normal way of how people will be promoting their products going forward. And fitness is also something that we're all very concerned about, especially watching news of fitness for mental health. Having an XR device allows us to be able to feel much more enjoyment from XR, from fitness without getting bored. Because if you're just doing jump ropes and push-ups every day, after a while you get bored. But if you can use VR to gamify activities, and I actually brought into my quarantine a VR device so that I can use it every day and stay fit without leaving my room. I think that's going to be the norm going forward. So, going forward, so kind of to wrap things up, I think we're really getting to a world where we need to start having a new mindset and change the way we evaluate and our perspectives on how we do business and how we work with our teams, our staff, our customers. We're now in the past been living in a world of scarcity, in a place where time is very limited, in a place where location is critical, as well as everybody wants money and needs money to survive. And IQ is how you're judged in terms of your abilities, and having the right answers is what separates you from the rest of the crowd. And then building credentials is what we continue to strive for every day, and gathering wealth, right? And then at the end of the day, we want to have a certain level of status so that we feel like we've succeeded. We're getting to a world where a lot of these things just don't matter anymore. We're getting to a place where we're going to have more food, more things than we ever need. If we are going out less, we may even need less things so that there will be even more abundance out there. Our time is going to be so much more flexible than we've ever had before. We won't have to go into the office. We won't have to do commutes. We won't have to do as many business trips. And where you work, where you live, where you study won't matter anymore. And if you're not buying all kinds of stuff, do you need that much money, or do you want something else that really will motivate you? And it's really going to be our imagination that will separate us, not our IQ, because there's going to be AI out there that will help to fill in any IQ gaps that we ever have. And it's not about having the answers at your hands. It's really about having the right questions, because again, devices will bring the answers to you if you ask the right questions. And it's about wisdom, about how do you take all this information and what do you do with it? Not just having some paper on the wall that says you've gone to a school or done something. And at the end of the day, wealth doesn't matter if you don't have your health. And I think that's something that we all are more conscious of than we've ever been. And at the end of the day, it's really about our ability to find our purpose and to execute our purpose. I think that's what should be driving all of us to do what we do every day. Not about getting a title or becoming a certain recognized person, right? So I think this is something that we need to think about. How can we take this new mindset and start finding new problems that we need to solve? What do we do next now? How do we spend our time? What kind of problems do we want to solve? How do we want to manage our companies? How do we take this technology and implement it in the industry that we're familiar with? Because I think as an entrepreneur, I don't advocate everybody to now go become an entrepreneur in VR. I advocate for you to think about, with all this technology that are coming out in this space, how is that going to impact the industry that you are already in, that the space that you already know? And then how can those technologies help you solve those problems faster, better, cheaper than they've been done before? I think that's going to create some real opportunities that haven't been seen. And hopefully I've given you some I guess view of what's coming down, even though most of everything I've said is actually something that's already happening today. It's just not widely accepted yet. And as an entrepreneur, we're going to have a lot of decisions that we need to make going forward, a lot of paths that are unclear. But it is something that the more clarity you have, the easier it will be for you to make those decisions. So I just kind of leave you with one question: is how will you prepare your company and yourself for this coming XR first future, where we're going to be spending a lot more time inside devices and inside virtual environments than we've ever been before, and it will be a device that we will be more dependent on than we are on our phones and our PCs today. So I think we're at the Q&A. So thank you for your attention. If you feel free to contact me if you have any additional questions on follow me on Twitter, @Graylin on Twitter. And I guess we will now switch to the Q&A section.
Alvin, incredible presentation. So many pearls of wisdom. My first question I just got to ask: are you taking the red pill or the blue pill?
Honestly, I'm taking both pills every day because I think there are so many advantages to a virtual environment and a virtual world and so much potential for it to do good. But I also realize that as humans, we need to also be conscious and present in the real world that we live in, because that's the world that we can make the most impact. I don't want people to really enjoy the virtual world too much that they don't come back to reality. And I think that's there's some people that are addicted to gaming and other types of entertainment that's it becomes harmful. And I think XR actually has the potential to do that because it is so powerful, because it is so real, that there is a danger for people to take that pill and take it too seriously. But I would encourage everybody to use this technology as a tool to enhance your lives, not to replace your lives.
Awesome, thank you. So we got Amanda. Her question is that she is a founder of an ed tech startup that is creating AR experiences to create mobile first learning scenarios for high school students who are taking AP classes. The challenges that she is running into is where to find talent and talented developers who have experience to create quality AR experiences. Do you have any recommendations on where to source talent?
So there is actually a community called Educators in VR, and there are about 6,000 strong of developers and teachers and various folks who are interested in using this technology, applying this technology. And if Amanda can join that group, I think there will be lots of resources in that community that can help her both create content as well as find existing content that could actually be already used to solve her problems.
Terrific. So we've got Coco, who is a huge fan, and her question is, where would you personally go using VR, real or fictional?
I think the reason to do VR is to go someplace that you cannot go in the physical world. So I would like to go back in history and see how the world was 100 years ago or 1,000 years ago, and be able to take and kind of feel what it was like to be there at that time, versus reading a book and learning history that way, to be able to live the life of a person at various ages. Or also to go to places that are very difficult to go, let's say to Mars. I think we all recently have become very entranced by what's happening in space. But not everybody's going to be able to get onto a rocket. But everybody who has a headset can go and see what it's like to experience life on Mars or in a space station, etc. Right? So anybody can really role play in any role that they want to, and have a experience that is memorable as if they did it live. So I think that's really the most powerful part of this technology, is that it creates memories and skills and inspirations that you would have if you actually physically went to these places.
Love that. We've got Jacob. He is curious to know if HTC is doing work in indoor scenes, like home, shopping malls, interior spaces.
Indoor scenes as in tools to help develop spaces, or do you mean location-based entertainment type of facilities? I'm not sure I fully understand the question.
Jacob, maybe you can share some more information in the chat, what you were really referring to there, but we can move on to Wendy's question. Out of everything you've mentioned in innovation, what are you personally most excited about and why?
I think the thing that I'm most excited about is applying XR to education, because the ability to get an education, I think, is the most impactful thing that will determine your future. And so if we can utilize the technology to educate more people, to give high quality education to as wide a public as possible, and to be able to communicate in a way that anybody can understand it, no matter what type of learning style they have, and to be able to share the educational power of the best educators that are so rare in a way that it expands and amplifies their abilities. I think that's something that has huge impacts. I think we're very fortunate for the people that were able to go to good universities or had inspiring teachers. And some of these folks were the ones that then later on go and change the world. But if you've never had that had that luck to be in the right city or the right country or born to the right parents, you can still have the best education. I think then you can control how your life will turn out, no matter where you're from and what kind of socioeconomic background you're from. And if we can bring and create a few more Elon Musk or Stephen Hawking's or Einstein's, think about how much they will then create, which will then impact our future. And I think that's what I'm most excited about. In fact, that was my thesis paper back in university when I first was exposed to VR almost 30 years ago. So.
Great. And Tina wants to know, how does this technology affect eye health?
Affect eye what?
Eye health.
Eye health, okay. VR and XR actually has been applied to healthcare for dozens of years in terms of, both for mental health, for post-traumatic stress, for pain relief, for various therapies, for rehabilitation, because it allows people to bypass some of the brain's or utilize the brain's malleability to heal itself, and also to allow people to diagnose and help them more be conscious of health, so that they can actually influence people to do more self-care. Right, so there's a lot of applications of the technology today. It's also being used for remote surgeries, for people who doctors who may be 1,000 miles away, putting on a headset and then doing a remote surgery on a patient which they cannot access physically. So there are just so many opportunities, as well as drug development. One of our invested companies, Nanome, just actually published some new papers about how they're working to create various new pharmaceuticals through a VR model to look at and analyze the various molecules that would be very difficult to do without the visualization of multiple dimensions.
So cool. Honestly, I feel like we could talk forever. There's still so many questions in the chat. This is such an interesting, topic, and just visualizing our future and how just crazy and different things are going to be. But thank you so much for being here today, Alvin. Everyone, please give Alvin a round of applause, share some clapping hand emojis in the chat. And maybe in the future we'll be doing this conference in a VR setting, and we'll have you back.
Yes, definitely. So we should talk about that. But thank you, Startup Grind and the whole entrepreneur community, and really go in and learn more about XR. I think it's going to change your businesses. So thank you.
Thank you.